Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Millbrae School District meeting, our first meeting of 2020. Can everyone please stand up and join me for a flag salute?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. All right, this meeting is being televised and recorded for the transcription of the minutes. This meeting will be replayed on MCTV, Channel 27, on Saturday, January 11th at 11:30 a.m., and the following Monday, January 13th, 2020 at 3:30. At this time, speakers wishing to address the board this evening should turn in the completed speaker card to the board secretary. As of now, we didn't. No action was taken during the closed session. Approval of the agenda.
I'd like to amend the agenda to place item 7.1 before item 6.1.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, say no. Okay. Motion carries. All right, 7.1, final action regarding expulsion of pupil, case number 2019-20-01. Based on our closed session hearing and deliberation hearing from the school district and the parents, as a board that we are going to take an action regarding the expulsion. Anyway,
You need a movement. A move.
I need a motion approval of.
Move to approve. Second.
Second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Motion carries. Okay. All right. Back to our presentation. Okay, K&N Public Finance. Blake?
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Good evening. It's nice to be back. This is my first board meeting of the year as well. And yeah, it's a good conversation to have. I'm reporting out on the highlights of the refunding that was done at the end of the year last year. So I'm going to share with the board and community some of the highlights of that transaction and answer questions should there be any. So as we reached the end of November, we successfully concluded a refunding of the district's election of 2011's Series 2012 bonds, so bonds that were originally sold in 2012. By refunding the outstanding bonds, the district was able to lower the outstanding debt service payments that taxpayers would pay by $1.94 million over the life of those bonds. The way that happened is because the true interest cost, or the interest rate, the average interest rate of the refunding bonds that were sold resulted in a 3.179% rate. And you compare that to the average coupon of the bonds that were outstanding at 4.726, so a significant reduction. That's where that $1.94 million was generated. So on this first slide here, the table at the bottom left, it really captures some of those key attributes of the transaction. There was just over $12 million of refunding bonds sold, proceeds of which will be used to pay a portion of that election of 2011 Series 2012 bonds. The rates were locked in on October 31st, and the transaction officially closed on November 26th. And then some other details here below. The maturities that were refunded on the old bonds were between 2033 and 2042. The term of the entire payments was not extended or changed. It aligns exactly with what the original bond transaction that was sold in 2012 was. It was simply a matter of reducing the rates on those outstanding bonds. And the underwriting firm that the district worked with on this refunding transaction was RBC Capital Markets. Okay, moving to the next slide. Just looking at just sheerly a summary of the taxpayer savings, really in a comparative way here on this slide. In the third and fourth quarter of 2019, we saw some volatility as it relates to interest rates. I had presented some preliminary numbers to the board in October, specifically October 15th, at which time we were preliminarily estimating debt service savings at $1.38 million, are in present value terms approximately $889,000 or 8.28% of the bonds refunded. The results that I just shared were significantly improved, given that the market really, we hit the market was stable. There was a lot of investor demand, and I'll go into that here very shortly, which helped the district actually secure lower borrowing costs than what we originally anticipated. So the end result is an improved savings going from 1.38 to 1.93, and that percentage going from 8.28 to 11.77% as a percentage of bonds refunded. Now, the 1.93 or the present value savings, you compare that, there wasn't a lot of bonds that were actually refunded. So the percentage that we secured at 11.77% is very strong. And you compare that to some of the other refundings the district has done over the past several years, and this has some of the highest metrics in terms of savings secured than we've seen the district be able to achieve. So certainly a great result here with the 2019 refunding and a significant amount of dollars saved for taxpayers within the Millbrae community. So one of the highlights, outside of just sheerly the savings, is the district's credit rating. And this continues to be a source of pride and success with each of the bond transactions that we've had in the recent history. Millbrae School District met with Moody's as it pertains to the 2019 refunding, and Moody's affirmed the district's AA1 rating, placing the district among the highest 15% of school districts in the entire state. Really, the only school districts that have a higher rating are those that are community funded, or what was previously referred to as basic aid, not reliant upon the state funding metrics because their assessed value is so high. There's one rating category above the AA1 that the school district currently has, which is AAA. And again, that category for by and large is reserved for those community-funded schools. So I think Millbrae School District should feel very proud about receiving that highest rating really possible as a non-community funded school district. Some of the factors that Moody's continues to note within their credit opinion is just the strength of the tax base, the continued growth, the socioeconomic wealth levels, strong management of the district, as all sources of supporting that AA1 rating category. So on the next page here, we're looking at the cost of issuance, and as per Education Code, it requires after the sale of bonds to report out what the actual costs are, because it's all estimates leading up to all the discussions until the bonds actually sale. So on this slide, we're listing out all of the transactional costs, which include legal, municipal advisory costs, rating costs, and a variety of other ancillary costs associated with a bond transaction, most of which are flat fees going into it. There wasn't significant change in the preliminary cost of the actual based on what was shared previously. And then I really have one more slide that really just kind of captures what this school board and what the district administration has been able to do through the course of its series of refundings over the last 4 years. This is the third refunding in the last 4 years, which continues to showcase the district's fiscal stewardship of taxpayer funds. There is no requirement to refinance outstanding bonds. It really takes a proactive board and administration to look at these opportunities and to decide when to proceed at opportune times. Through the course of the 3 refundings that the district has proceeded with, collectively, taxpayers have saved over $5 million from the debt originally issued. So, significant amount of savings. And I know that through conversations with staff, there will continue to be a watchful eye on refunding opportunities moving forward for those bonds outstanding. So with that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions. Would there be any
Questions?
Hi, Blake. So thank you very much for your efforts on this presentation. It's very nicely laid out. So I did have a couple of questions that I'd like to pose. So in terms of our, community being able to relate to some of these items you've pointed out maybe in a way that they're a little more used to. So you correct me if I'm wrong if I say this, that the sale date, that's the date essentially that you locked in the sale price. Would that be correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so it's like a homeowner locking in the interest rate on the loan that they're going to be getting, a mortgage loan. And the close date is, again, like a mortgage loan. The rate that they locked in at the initial point is what they got at the close of the transaction. Would that be a correct way of stating it?
The funding date.
Yes.
Correct.
As of the funding date. Okay. So we essentially locked in those savings for our community at that point in time. Understanding that, as you pointed out, rates are volatile. And just like for someone shopping for a mortgage, sometimes it's a bit of, it's timing. And if you time it correctly, you can end up with some additional savings. If you don't, you can end up with less savings. But thankfully, you guys timed it very, very well, so thank you. On the final expenses, so in terms of the final cost, when we say that the district is going to have savings of 1.94, is that after the costs of the transaction have been factored out? Is that net of it? Is that
net of all costs, correct.
Okay, good. And so in terms of the cost of this transaction versus what you initially estimated, were the costs essentially the same, a little more, a little less?
They were essentially the same.
They were essentially the same.
In fact, they came in a little bit less than what we originally predicted. Usually we try to be conservative with what some of these other costs that will come in will end up to be. And so in this case, as in prior refunding efforts, the cost came in a little bit less than what we anticipated. So
would it be a fair way of saying that, like a mortgage transaction, these other costs are similar to outside third parties that are you're paying them for their services in the transaction? So it's like paying an appraiser, a title company, et cetera, et cetera. Would it be similar to those type of expenses?
Similar in the context of transactional costs in order to get, in your hypothetical, a mortgage done. In this case, these are fixed costs embedded in that transaction to get the refinancing of the outstanding GO bonds completed.
Right. Okay. That's very good. No, I'm very, very pleased with what you're reporting to us, so thank you.
Yeah. Is that this savings that you're showing us, is this a one-time savings, or moving forward as time goes on, could we save more, or do we have to refinance every time?
These savings are locked in at this point.
Yearly?
One point of clarification is that there are proportional savings over the life of the bonds going out to 2042 that comprise the 1.94 million of debt service savings. So it's not a one-time, one-year tax rates drop to very low levels and then they go back up to what they were before. It's proportionately realized over the remaining life of the bonds.
Okay.
And we will have opportunities in the future if there's a chance to do it again, right?
There is. We actually were looking. There was a subsequent series of bonds for the 2011 election that were actually issued in 2013. We looked at possibly including those in this transaction. The fact of the matter is that when bonds are originally sold, investors that buy those bonds are given a protection for a period of time, and it prevents the old bonds from actually being retired earlier than this 10-year call protection. So it does create inefficiencies if you reach too far out before that actual call date. So long story short is, yes, there will be a future opportunity, and the most likely candidate will be those bonds that were issued originally in 2013. And so KNN, as the municipal advisor to the district, will work closely with staff to continue to monitor opportunities to realize additional taxpayer savings.
How will the community get notified, just for the whoever is watching on TV?
Yeah, this presentation is one opportunity, I think, for the community to hear the job that the district has done to save considerable amount of money on its outstanding general obligation bonds. There are, in some cases, maybe an opportunity to do a little press release in the paper, local paper, which KNN can certainly coordinate with staff on to get something out. Because there's really, unless you get the word out, there's really no way of taxpayers knowing, while the savings are significant, unless someone is really putting a fine eye on their property tax bills each and every year, and they're going to say, hey, the school district did something to lower its taxes, it may go unnoticed. And I think in most cases it does. Yeah. So it really takes a proactive effort to really get that message out, because it is a great result, and it's a significant amount of money collectively within the community.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a great idea. Like I said, most people don't really care about this stuff, but it's good information for the community to know.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I just wanted to say this document is really a great talking piece moving forward. Yeah.
Yeah. But a lot of people, like, if you don't know numbers, because then it's hard to really understand what's really happening, really. So it's a good it's an opportunity to explain it in a simple way for an average person to understand it. So.
Yeah, and I think the hypothetical of comparing it to a mortgage, I think a lot of people understand that aspect most so, and there is a lot of commonalities there, and that's really what was done. And just like you would refinance your home mortgage, this is very much similar to that.
So maybe we can get in touch and get a little blurb out in the newspaper?
Absolutely.
Okay, good.
That'd be wonderful.
Any other questions? No? Thank you so much. That's good news to start out the 2020 year.
Yes. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Blake.
Action item.
It's
President Musa, if I can have us revisit 7.1. Although the board took a vote, we never called out the recommended action. So I'll call out the recommended action. If Trustee Musa, you can just repeat the vote that was counted.
Okay.
It is recommended that the Board of Trustees take action regarding expulsion of pupil for case 20192010. 01.
Right. So we need to take another
for the
approval?
record. Yes.
All right. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. All right, motion carries. Thank you. Next, financial audit presentation. Who's here to?
Yes. Good evening, trustees. Basically, the following presentation will be outlining our 2018-2019 financial audit presentations. So the rationale on this one is that per Education Code, by January 31st of each year, we have to provide the audit report on a public setting. So this is the opportunity for the firm, Pham, Chavan, and Associates, to present that to the trustees and the public at large. So.
Okay.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for inviting me out to your first board meeting of the year to share with you the results of the 2019 audit. So the audit went very well. We had a clean opinion, which means there was no modifications to any of the opinions that we issued, no material weaknesses were noted, no significant passed-on adjustments or any disagreements with management. So Maria, Denise, and their team, they're doing a great job in the business office there. All right, I just want to highlight a couple key points from the audit. Your net position as of June 30th, 2019 was a deficit $3.2 million. So it's still in the red, except you had a decrease from last year of $667,000. However, in the funds, you had an increase over prior year of $1.1 million, so you're at $27.3 million overall in terms of on the fund statement side. So in the government-wide, you had a deficit mainly due to the implementation of the recent GASB 68 and 75, which you guys are aware of in the recent years. So that's not news to you guys, but the funds are healthy. So I'll open it up to questions if you guys have any specific questions.
Any questions?
So, if I may, so just for the general public.
Sure.
So in terms of the process that you're following, I mean, you are an independent agency, and you follow standard accepted accounting principles. So it's just as if you were coming in to audit a business or of any type. Would that be correct?
That's correct, yeah. We, specifically with you guys, since you guys are a government agency, we have different auditing standards as far as governmental auditing standards that we follow in addition to just standard auditing standards.
Okay. So would it be fair to say that you look at our process, and as long as the process in and of itself fits within generally accepted guidelines, you offer no additional opinion other than that. Would that be correct?
Yes. So the audit we perform is a two-phase audit. We came out at interim in mid-year, and we kind of assessed your processes, your internal controls, basically. And we identified some of the key controls. We did some sampling and testing to make sure that the controls were, working as they were designed to work. So that's the controls piece of it. There's federal compliance that we look at as well. So there's that audit that we do in conjunction with just the financial audit. So there's some compliance pieces as well as state compliance, which is a big part of our audit. So it's financial and a compliance piece.
So in terms of, I'm sorry, Frank.
No, go ahead.
So in terms of random sampling, could you just give the general public an idea of maybe one or two items that you would say, okay, I want to see this, and this district has no control over what it is you might ask for?
That's correct. So our sampling method, depending on the procedure that we're performing, it could be random sampling, it could be based on materiality that we set as auditors. But yes, it is independent of the district in terms of our selection.
Yeah. Do you work with our staff after you take your first look? Do you come back and work with our staff?
Oh, quite a bit, yeah.
Okay.
Denise and her team work with us, constantly throughout the year, just interacting. And I don't know specifically for this year, but there'll be, questions will arise that they'll have. And, there's a lot of exchange.
So with improvements, you help them with improvements and how to
Absolutely.
change things? Okay.
Yeah, so we have what's known as management points where we discussed it. It hasn't risen to the level of any finding or any exceptions noted in the audit itself, but they may be recommendations to improve the process or tighten the controls that are currently existing. So we'll do that in a management letter form. So,
Great.
That's it. Any other questions? No? All right. Thank thank you so much for the presentation.
Sure, absolutely.
If I may add a little bit on this process, basically what is very important for us to have an excellent relationship with our auditors is to ensure that we are following internal protocols. So when we have something that we're not sure about it in terms of are we doing the right thing, are we using the right funds, or are we in compliance with the specific stipulations, it's when we reached out to our auditors just to ensure that we are in compliance within our guidelines. So basically their work is to make sure that we are doing, and practicing according to specific guidelines within the accounting system. So we need them.
Yes.
Well, that's actually great. I mean, I would recommend that we add it to our other bond refinance to kind of also brag about that we're doing well. So, we passed the audit because, I remember, I'm sure a few, again, the community would like to know that we are, spending our funds properly.
Especially if we're going out for a bond.
Especially if you're going out for a bond. Because I remember when we were going out for the parcel tax, a lot of the community members were asking, what about audits? What are you guys doing with your money? But this is an opportunity also to talk about.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, especially when you guys had your bond measure, the Proposition 39 measures.
Yeah.
We did a special audit for those as well. So those required a special audit.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Good stuff. Thank you. Good. All right. So I guess we need a motion.
This is an action item. Yes.
This is an action item. So that's 7.2. We need a motion to approve the audit.
So moved.
Second.
Second?
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Next, approval of SCEA job description. Tara.
It is recommended that the Board of Trustees approve the behavior intervention coach job description to help us align with our current practices and the need in the district to support students and staff around behavioral needs.
You have a question?
I just, a little question. How do we access the behavior intervention coach?
Well, in my dream world, as we continue to kind of build a behavior team, to first start, if we could have more than one behavior coach, it'd be great to kind of split them on the kind of northern, southern schools in the district, and then continuing to use that online referral that I've reported out on a couple times in terms of what is the need and how do we deploy the right person. Mm-hmm. So are we looking at tier 1 responses that we can coach in the classroom? Are we looking at tier 2 responses, or are we looking that we need tier 3 behavior plans? And then working with our behavior supervisor to develop those plans and have the coach provide that instruction and coaching and support in the classroom while it's happening. How do you de-escalate the situation? How do you ensure that all students are engaged in the learning while it's happening, and then slowly fading out to support the teacher in doing that work, or the additional staff that might be working with the student? Okay. So starting with an online referral.
Perfect. And then I think I read somewhere that this position would also aid in total school behavior plans.
Absolutely.
Not just for individual students, but for behavior plans within the schools.
Within the school, absolutely.
Perfect. Thank you.
Reinforcing the PBIS that's already at the school site.
Right.
And how do we look at those practices and kind of hone in on where we need a little more support and where we need a little more celebration.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, motion to approve.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. All right, motion carries. All right, approval of sunshine proposal. Vaughn?
Trustees, this is a recommended item as well. We brought this for public comment at our last board meeting tonight. It's a recommended action. It's recommended that the Board of Trustees approve the 2019-20 Millbrae School District initial proposal to MEA as presented.
Discussions? All right, motion to approve.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. All right, motion carries. Thank you. All right, next, approval of sunshine the proposal. That's the Millbrae Education Association bond.
Correct. Once again, trustees, it works the opposite as well. The Millbrae School District has to propose and approve a sunshine to MEA, and this is MEA's proposal to the Millbrae School District. It's for your approval, recommended as presented.
So moved.
Second?
Second?
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. All right, motion carries. Thank you. All right, 8.1, San Mateo County Investment Fund.
Yes, trustees. This one is just for an information item. 8.1 highlights the San Mateo County Investment Fund for the month of November 2019. Again, the rationale for this one is that any LEA participating or receiving any money, a portion to or to be paid by a county treasurer. A county treasurer needs to be presented. Basically, what we're highlighting on this the gross earning for the month of November 30th was 1.959%. So you can make reference to the attachments. That's basically the information, the summary. Page 123 in our packet highlights basically the summary that I'm presenting here on 8.1. So in more detail. So it's just for information.
All right. Any questions?
I do.
All right.
So, Connie, if you were to characterize from an investor's standpoint, the risk rating on these investments. So let's say you're talking about funding your 401k, and you go to websites and they say, okay, this fund, this is for a conservative investor. This is for somebody that wants moderate growth. This person wants fixed income, et cetera, et cetera. This person wants aggressive growth. So how would you characterize the investments that this county has made on behalf of the school district? How would you characterize them?
Well, based on my limited exposure working with this county, I know that it's a very moderate approach because we're dealing with public funds here. Obviously, they're acting on the best interest of every school district participating in this pool of investment. So it's not as risky as a private within the private sector, given the fact that we're dealing with public funds. So, forgive me, I don't have too much exposure to this specific county, but I would assume that it's a moderate approach compared to a private investor.
Okay, the reason I ask that is because, as those of us that were on the board 10 years ago, when the markets crashed, and the district ended up losing a significant amount of money, it was because of how those funds, the public funds, had been invested. So, from my standpoint, it's always something that, it's in our best interest and part of our stewardship to make sure we understand, how aggressive or how conservatively the district's money is being invested. And certainly, I have no complaints about how conservative this money is. Some people would say, geez, that's not much of a return compared to what you could get. But we're not an investment firm. This is the public's money that we're trying to safeguard. The other thing that I would say is, and besides looking at this periodically, is if we have an issue with how the state of California is investing our money, what are our alternatives, or what's our course of recourse? If we feel that the type of investments that are being utilized are too risky, or there are uncertainties about, what's behind any securities that are involved, I think that would be a good thing to talk about in an upcoming board session. Okay, so what are the recourses for the public? If we're stewards of this money and we've got concerns about what's going on with this money, not right now, but at some future point, what can we do? Because I certainly would not want to be in the position that we were in a few years ago and not have good answers for the public as far as, okay, we have only limited ability to control what happens with this money. And that, on so-and-so date, we did voice concerns to the appropriate parties about how these funds are being invested on our behalf. So I personally feel that's just like, the audit that we go through, that this is something that we should look at periodically and really on an annual basis. It's not I don't think it's that much to ask of us to look at it annually, because this actually, in this format that you've laid out, it's pretty easy to go through it very quickly and render an opinion. And if we have questions, we could pose them to you at that point.
Absolutely, yes. And it's always nice to be proactive versus reactive,
Yes.
a plan of action.
So you have a question? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to ask something similar to what Don just said. Theoretically, could a school district pull out of its fund? Like, let's say the school district isn't doing well, and so there's no other recourse but to go for the money that we have in this fund. Could a school district pull out that money in a case like that?
So a point of clarification, we had this discussion at a past board meeting. There's two classifications. The money actually is not surplus of the district, and so it's not a surplus that we've declared to say that this is an abundance of the Millbrae School District's fund, therefore we're going to invest in this account, this account, this account. The dollars are at the county level, and so they have their own guidelines and jurisdictions in terms of what they invest and the programs that they choose. So it's not, there's two levels of investment. We don't have excess money where we have $2 million at the end and we get to choose our own investment portfolios. It's based on the interest and based on the surplus at the county level.
I see.
So we don't have a lot of jurisdiction in choosing and pulling different investment accounts. But it is a good point, and certainly we'll work with the business office to bring back more of the specifics, as Trustee Revillo was alluding to.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Speakers wishing to address the board on items on the agenda may complete the speaker's card and submit them to the board secretary. Speakers addressing specific item on the agenda will have opportunity to address the board at the time of the agenda item in the meeting. If you are addressing the board on a non-agenda item, please be aware that the provisions of the Brown Act prohibits the board from acting or discussing such matters at this meeting. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes per person per topic. All right. MEA, CSEA, MEF, members of the community.
Not all at once.
Yeah. Yes. Maybe next. Anyway, trustee communications. Volunteers?
Here, I'll go. Just wanted to wish everybody a happy new year, 2020. I just wanted to say I'm looking forward to meeting some of our new prospective TK and kindergarten families at our panel hosted at the individual elementary sites coming up January 10th and the 17th. And then just looking ahead in February, it looks like our calendars are going to be really, really busy. But it's a good busy because we're going to be supporting all of our community partners, Rotary, Lions, PCBA, MEF, in supporting their efforts, that what they do so graciously and so generously, bringing back much needed funds and programs to our school district. So I'm looking forward to seeing all of you very often in February. So that's it.
Thank you. Yes, Frank?
Sure. Happy New Year. Happy holidays to everybody. It's good to be back. As Trustee Ferrario said, we have a lot of fun events coming up. Rotary Lions, PCB, the MEF. It's all coming up, and it's great to be a part of it all and support it all, but how they support us. So that's about all I have. Yeah.
Okay, Don?
Well, if you look back just even a few years, these events just did not exist. And it's a sign, I think, of the growth of the school district, the support for the school district within the community. I want to thank our administration, particularly our superintendent, for being the face of our school district and really promoting, the community outreach for us, because, it's really been a significant change over the last few years. And I did want to welcome our incoming president, Maggie. I think, we're very blessed to have you on this school board, Maggie. We truly are. And, we're looking forward to having a great year under your leadership.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yes, we do. We are going to have a busy couple of months ahead of us. So I'm sure the dates will come out, and we'll figure out which is which we're going to be able to attend to. But
you're not going to all of them?
Well, I'm going to try. But I do want to add one event that's happening this weekend, and I hope that if you're able, you can still register. It's Legislators' Day. So San Mateo CSBA puts on this event. This is our third year, and the topic will be, again, the full fair funding. It's happening this Saturday from 8 to 11:30, and it'll be at the San Mateo High School District office. And we're going to have Jerry Hill, Wiener, Mullen, Ting, and Berman are going to be there. And also the 5 candidates that are running for Senate. Yeah. So I don't know there's few of them are turned out, but I know Jerry Hill is one of them. And there's 5 candidates in the San Mateo County that's running for that position. So it's an opportunity to meet with them and sit and kind of see where they're at in terms of education. Yeah. So you can still register online if you go to their site. So it's a Saturday, and it's a great opportunity for board members to voice our concern, and it's always about funding, right? So, speaking of funding, the I Vote for Kids campaign is up and running. The November, I'm sure there's in March and in November, there's going to be bonds and ballots that have to do with education. And we're not saying which one to support, but do get educated and know which ones are going to be on the ballot. And again, vote for kids, because any of them will help the kids with funding, helps kids get better 21st century learning and resources. So anyway, look it up. You can go online, I Vote for Kids, and there's a I don't know how long the video is. There's a video that explains to you what that campaign is all about. So, yes, and then, looking forward to a great year, even though the school year is going to be gone before with all the events we're going to be at. So, anyway, okay. Superintendent report.
Good evening, trustees. Because I knew we had a light agenda for tonight, my presentation is going to be interactive, and it might take us past the hour of 8. And so please engage in this conversation with me. Tonight, trustees, I'm going to present on the California dashboard, which was recently released by the state of California, particularly the Department of Education. I wanted to highlight the aspect of differentiated assistance because we were identified by the state of California to receive differentiated assistance from the San Mateo County Office of Education. Within your packets, you have the comprehensive dashboard report And it looks like this, trustees. I wanted to just provide an update tonight on how to read this particular document because this document is pretty extensive. It's the entire report for the district. And so tonight I'm going to highlight some key areas that will help us outline the purpose of this particular dashboard, what districts would do with the dashboard, and how it communicates to our stakeholders and parents, particularly at home. So this is the state's new accountability and continuous improvement system. It's an online tool. It's a tool that is accessible to Board of Trustees, to the community. It provides information in regards to how districts and all of our schools, how we perform, specifically meeting the need of our students. It contains reports that display performance of local educational agencies, that's us as an LEA, specific schools, and the specifics that are really interesting are the specific student groups in terms of how we look at supporting specific groups. It identifies strengths, challenges, and areas of improvement for us. And an item to note is that there is a difference between the focus areas, and the priority areas that are listed under the LCFF. And so if I toggle between the dashboard language and the LCFF, it's because it's under one system. The state measures, which are not the priorities, the state measures fall under the LCF priorities. What we look at in terms of accountability for the district are chronic absenteeism, graduation rate, which are specific to the high school, suspension rate, college and career readiness, pertaining to the high school once again, and then the academic performance in ELA and math, and this year our students will complete the science assessment. And then the last component of the state measure is in the component of the English learner progress. Our local measures, which our assistant superintendent presented to the board, that we've met these categories, basic conditions such as teacher qualifications, safe and clean buildings, implementation of standards, access to courses, and parental involvement. And so those are measures that you can see on the online tool as well. What does the dashboard measure? And the performance is based on two factors, and that is the current year's result, which is 2019, and it's compared to the results from 2018, whether we made gains, maintained, or decreased. How it is measured, it looks like a gas gauge. If we are in the performance level of red, that is the lowest performing in terms of lowest performance. And if we are looking at the blue indicator, that is the highest performing. And so when I go over some of the components of how we did as a school district, we want to see us move towards the blue. If we are in the red and the orange and the yellow, we have some work to do. How did we do in terms of comparison of data from 2018, 2019 in the area of English language arts? Although we declined 5 points, we still are in the green at 26.1 points above the standard. In mathematics, although we declined 3.1 points, we are still in the green, and which is 14.3 points above the standard. As a reminder, we're looking at all student data, all student groups across the district. In terms of our English learner progress, we met a very high mark at 67.6, making progress towards English language proficiencies. And within the proficiency, they have specific scale scores within that assessment. And in terms of the gauge there, it is at a very high mark. In terms of next steps for this particular data for the academics, the dashboard allows school districts to dig deeper. That was district-wide. It allows us to collaborate with our site administration to look at individual school sites, and particularly at that particular school site, identifying those student groups. And so those are our next steps with our administration. I separated the last two because this is some components that we need to look at as a district. The two groups in terms of chronic absenteeism and suspension rates, we are in the orange. We're in the orange because the data from last year compared to this year has increased. We have an increase of 3%, 9.7% chronically absent for the entire district, and the suspension rate has increased at a 1.1%, at a 1.6 suspension rate at least once. And so those are some indicators that we have to pay attention to, and those are some indicators that we have to take a look at further with our administration and our entire district. This is the quiz part for our trustees. We did qualify for differentiated assistance. Here is the definition for differentiated assistance. To be eligible for assistance, the same student group must meet the criteria in two different priority areas, which means in the red or lowest category for two different priority areas. Here are all of our student groups. If you were to take a look at the student report group, which subgroup would you imagine to qualify for technical assistance from the county?
Imagine?
What does the data tell us? Because this is public information.
White.
It's our white subgroup. Yeah. Our white subgroup is identified under student group report for 2019 as having concern areas in the red. Trustees going back to what we don't want is the red, because that is the lowest performing indicator for a subgroup for a priority area. And so certainly we're not going to ignore the other groups that you see. They just were not identified because they did not fall under the two different categories in the area of red. So what does that mean to us as a school district? Before I get into the differentiated assistance, I wanted to just make clear what the two priorities listed were. One being, just the last sentence, based on 180 school days, it means that a student would miss about 18 days per year. One of the things that we will have to take a look at is our process of independent study contracts, our process of excusal and unexcused. It doesn't matter. If a student has missed that many days or more, it's classified under chronic absenteeism. And then the suspension rate, defined as temporary complete exclusion from the school. A typical out-of-school experience lasts a few days, as you know, and so anytime a student is identified or has been suspended, it's coded in our system. So those are some indicators that we have to take a look at. What does that mean? We do plan, or we have designated meetings with the county, San Mateo County Office of Education. We're going to take this as an opportunity. They will work in partnership with our offices, our student services, Director, Ms. Tara Keith, will be leading our efforts in differentiated assistance. We're going to take a look at reviewing our data as it pertains to the identified priorities, as well as the other priorities that you may see, the red indicator. We'll look at some strengths and some areas of opportunities of our system, because it's not necessarily just how we log sometimes. It could be our practice. It could be our protocol. It could be our policies at the board level. And the hope is that we will review our system and build capacity to ensure that we address the student needs in those two areas and beyond if we see some red indicators at some of the other components. Any questions about the dashboard? Because that was an overall explanation of how to read the specifics. Trustees, what I've provided for you is for you to look deeper. This provides a more comprehensive look into the data. It breaks down the ELA to the different subgroups. It breaks down the math proficiencies to the different subgroups. It breaks down the English learners to the different indicators of performance. And so that's for your review. Certainly, if this is your first time seeing the packet for tonight, we can take questions at the next board meeting to clarify. But if you have any questions on just the big picture overview, Steve Ferrario.
Yeah, I have a couple. So you had mentioned about toggling between LCFF and the differentiated. So in terms of writing our LCFF, obviously some of our services would have to be related to where we need the most help. So, so that was my first question. Is that how we mend?
Trustee Ferrari, you hit it on the nail and reminded me that I have notes on my hands because I wanted to ensure that I knew the difference specifically to be able to explain. So yes, there are 10 priorities under LCFF, Local Control Funding Formula, and that governs the LCAP work that we write. Specifically, the suspension falls under the category the chronic absent falls under the category of school climate, which is LCAP Goal 3 for us. And then the suspension falls under pupil engagement. And so the specific areas of concern falls under a priority. And when we wrote our LCAP goals, we identified some of the priorities. And so the next step, Trustee Ferrario, would be to take a look at what goal did we set up last year? Did we meet those goals through the metrics that we've determined, and are our resources aligned with supporting those goals? For us, what that could mean is looking at specific positions in the district. Are those positions, do they add value in helping us meet our goals? And we will engage in those conversations. The next step for me would bring back to the board the specifics of LCAP Goal 1, 2, and 3, how we fared in terms of our dashboard. That's one of the expectations from the state of California to ensure that we're using this data and accountability system effectively as it pertains to our LCAP and LCFF.
So my second question or comment is, and I'm not calling out any of our interventions that we had on the LCAP, but do we have data that would speak to whether these interventions that we put in place last year, whether they were successful or not? And also, are these results with the suspensions and the tardies and everything, are they concentrated at one site or more than one site? Or, that would determine, I think, where, you put your interventions as well.
That's absolutely correct. So the beauty of the dashboard is the level of detail is based on that particular click. So if I were to go into the chronic absence component, if I clicked on the chronic absenteeism, it'll provide the 5x5 matrix, and it'll identify which school specifically is in the red. It'll identify which school is in the blue. And so that's our work with our principal, correct. And so with our principals, then they click on those components, and then it'll classify which group of students that fell in the red, which group of students fell in the blue. So yes, to dig deeper, we're going to, that's part of our work with the county as well. The first step is presenting this information to the board because this was just released. And so we will take action in moving forward in having conversations with presenting this to all our admin team this Thursday.
So what will Tara's job be in terms of working with and I know you're going to do a fabulous job, but in working with the county to help with our differentiated, because, that word has been around forever, and we've done differentiated instruction for our ELD students, and obviously it worked, right? But, and like you say, we can't ignore, our other subgroups, but I just don't know how. It seems like a huge undertaking, and I'm hoping the county will give us support, boots on the ground type of thing. They'll be here with us, right?
Correct. The first component of all of this is to form a district DA team, a differentiated assistant team. And one of the items that we discussed in cabinet was which teammates do we choose? We're going to look deeper at the data. If there is more of a concentration area at Taylor, then it would be appropriate to choose a Taylor member. If there's a concentration at Meadows, it would be appropriate to choose a Meadows teammate. Not to say that we would exclude folks, but the first phase is to form our teams. The first meeting is designated for the 23rd, which may or may not happen based on some of the components and folks' schedule. But the first meeting has yet to happen, and the first meeting will outline exactly what the county's support will look like.
And I'd be more than happy to, as an adjunct duty, or if you need anybody on the committee, I would love to be a part of that. So,
thank you for reminding me, because Trustee Pham also texted me stating that he would like to be part of that support team and group so that we can understand our area of study and our area of need.
Say that again.
Trustee Pham would like to be part of that team as well.
Great,
That
yeah.
guy.
And then I had one other question about, just a comment. Thank you for this report. I mean, this is so much clearer than all of this that I've seen ad nauseum. I mean, I can really, it's perfect, Vaughn. So thank you for clarifying that for us, because it's beautiful, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it truly is. So thank you.
Thank you.
The next piece, trustees, you all sent me to do some homework, so I'm making you do some homework as well. The last board meeting, Trustee Ravello asked, are we really 150 years old? So trustees, I have created a packet for you that's under the report. I pulled Chapter 3 from the Historical Development of the Millbrae Elementary School District, written by Anthony P. DeVell, and so it is for your pleasure and your reading. Yes, we were established way back when, and so I made a copy of Chapter 3, which outlines the historical information and how they gather the information. I will keep this in my office if you would like to check it out, but I have the history of Millbrae and also how the schools were created. So to answer your question, Trustee Ravello, yes, we are 150 years old as of January 1st, 2020. I share that information with you because the desired outcome from the trustees from our last meeting was that we would form 1, 2, 3 subcommittees, one being and it could all be in one being the celebration and designing of the Carolyn Shea plaque. The second one was to possibly plan a 150th birthday party as it pertains to our alcohol policy. That's what I remember us discussing. And then the last subcommittee work for the district was to form a committee to address the Census 2020 project. And so So bringing that back to the board, I'll bring that back on the 21st to look at the specifics of what we would like to do and possibly put trustees into some subcommittee teams.
Well, since Trustee Pham isn't here, I say we sign him up for all of it.
And then lastly, trustees,
Second that motion.
some upcoming events for us. Yes, we have our January and February upcoming dates. One of the items that is new, trustees, that you may have yet to see is the Wednesday, February 5th. We received an email from Lions Mr. Chen and the 4th Annual Lions Ecosystems Dinner at 6 p.m. Just received an invite for that for our cabinet as well as our trustees, so save the date. But that's your lineup for January and February.
So it was formerly known as the Movers and Shakers.
Yes.
That's what threw me.
I'm like, is this an addition to? When I said there's a conflict because the Movers and Shakers. Anyway.
Do you know where it's going to be, Pham?
At the Green
Hills Country Club.
Oh,
Yes.
perfect.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's my board update for tonight.
Thank you.
All right. All right. I need a motion to approve consent agenda.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Motion carries. All right. Future agenda items, possible future agenda items. Anything that you guys would like to add for?
No, just to repeat my request of the CBO, for some additional clarification on the investment.
Yes.
So
Okay.
just somewhere during this school year, that would be good.
Well, 2 of those are going to be with subcommittees. So we're going to make subcommittees, right?
Subcommittees for our homework.
No, for Census 2020
For census.
and user groups alcohol, right? Is that correct?
Carolyn Shea.
Yeah, and Carolyn Shea, yeah. You want to put that on there?
50th birthday. That's a lot of, yeah. Those are different,
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not all meant to be.
they're not meant to be the same. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else? I think that's enough of work that we added to it. All right, thank you. Meeting is adjourned.
Right.
You're here.
Good job.
Yeah, great job. Beautiful.